Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Kubey knives, KB 237. This is actually the 237A. There is a 237B, C, D, they come in different colors. I will be linking the different variants of these knives, or as many different as I can find, down below so you can check them out. I will also be linking Kubey's website so that you can go take a look at the knives and all the specs and everything officially from Kubey. This is very interesting. It is not a knife that I was aware of. Kubey actually reached out to me on Instagram and said, hey, we'd really like to send you a couple of knives. Have you ever reviewed one of our products? And I said, yeah, actually I did, and I was very impressed with the quality. And they said, great, we're going to send you a couple and you can take a look at them and whatever you want. And I said, okay, fantastic. So this is one of them. Very, very nice. Thank you so much, Kubey. Just full disclosure there. Let's go ahead and get a measurement on this guy. Overall length on the KB 237 is coming in at just a little tiny bit over 8 inches. They list this at closer to 8 1/4, but really it's about 8 inches on the dot. The blade length is about 3.5. Cutting edge is about 3 1/8. There is definitely, it doesn't look like it's a full forward choil, but it's a fairly large choil there. Taking away from some of the cutting edge, but you guys know how I feel about forward choils. I like them a lot. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons here. So up against the Ontario Rat Model 1, Ontario Rat coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the the Spyderco PM2? That's the next one. Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall, same length, so that's a pretty good size comparison right there. And last but not least, how about the Spyderco Para 3? Spyderco Para 3 is coming in at 7 1/4 inches overall. So how's the action on this guy? This knife actually uses ceramic bearings. That's interesting. The detent is plenty well tuned. The flipper tab is in exactly the right place, and it's also shaped nicely, not uncomfortable at all. It has a very snappy action. It is, easy to get it to come back down. It's sort of doesn't take many shakes really. There's a little bit of friction in there, and I don't know if that's because of the finish. I'm not really sure if this is a bead blasted finish. It kind of looks similar to, and it's not vapor blasting, but in some ways it actually does look very similar to the very fine tumbling that I saw on that Shirogorov here recently, or the vapor blasting that is on the CKF Resenti Snafu. That it's not the case. It's much more, it looks much more bead blasted. That's got a hint of some reflectivity. My camera's actually not really sure what to do with it. In a previous video I actually called it for lack of a better term, I called it a cloudy day finish. Whatever it is, it's nice. I'm not sure if that's actually what's causing the friction. It's not a lot of friction. It's just more than what I would experience in, say, the Civivi Praxis, which is very much in the same price range. We'll talk about that here. But the Praxis is a satin finished blade, so that could have something to do with it. In any case, though, the action is perfectly acceptable in this price range, and it's really nothing that you should be concerned with. It's very solid, very snappy, very fun to deploy, very comfortable to deploy. Let's go ahead and do the hardware check. We'll get out my handy dandy WIA bit selector and WIA magnetic driver, two items that are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of every single video. Just pull up in the description, click the store, and look for knife maintenance. Pretty sure that this is going to be a T8, and it is. And then the handle screw down here, which there's one on each side, looks to be a T6. Let's go ahead and test that out here real quick so you guys can take a look. Yeah, that guy's a T6. And then the pocket clip screw, which is also the screw that goes through and connects with the standoff, is also a T6. You guys know I'm always like, I don't like T6, and I prefer T8, but I gotta give this thing points because there's just one screw on each side. So yeah, the hardware is very minimal. Disassembly of this guy is going to be very easy. So yeah, that's great. There's not really much to complain about there. Let's do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see there is a little bit of excess thickness, but we have very heavy chamfering going on here. It's not quite contouring, but it does make for a very nice, comfortable ergonomic experience. Sorry, I guess I'm spitting today all over the review mat. The heavy chamfering is very preferable to my hands, and it does fill out the hands nicely without feeling excessively blocky. So I'm not really going to count off too much for that. Some people really don't like even the thickness of the Spyderco Para 3. So, you know, if that's too thick for you, it's too thick for you, but I wouldn't call it excessive. In terms of height, up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, two knives that have, in my opinion, unquestionably awkward carry profiles. Nobody ever seems to complain about. You can see there, it's a little bit longer than the Para 3 in handle, not quite as long as the PM2. In terms of overall height, even including the flipper tap, it's nowhere near maximum height of these two. So overall carry profile, you know, if it might be a little bit thick for you, but really it's not going to take up that much room in the pocket, especially if you're used to carrying a full-size knife. This is G10 with countersunk steel liners, and there has been a little bit of milling down on the inside. You can see there's some couple little holes down there. Let's go ahead and weigh it. Oh, you know what we should do real quick before we weigh it, so you guys can get an idea of blade stock thickness, is measure the blade stock thickness. So thickness on the blade is, I'm gonna guess 125. Nope, closer to 135 actually. 135 thousandths it looks to be. Yeah, 135 thousandths on the blade. So 3.5 inch blade at 135 thousandths. Overall weight, let's go ahead and make sure that we are reset here. Coming in at 4.69 ounces, just as a reference point. Ritter Hogue, just about exactly the same. Some people are going to consider that to be too bulky, too big, too heavy. That's right in my normal, you know, weight range that I like to carry. I like the knife to, you know, to be solid, to feel solid. Regularly, I carry knives between 4 ounces and about 6.5 ounces, so I don't have a problem with that. It's definitely over the ounce and inch mark that a lot of people go by, you know, so if that's what you go by, no big deal there. If you you know, regularly carry the Bug Out or Para 3 lightweight, this probably isn't going to be your cup of tea. Or if you you know, wear athletic shorts or, you know, tighter fitting pants every single day. If you wear regular jeans, regular pants, and you're used to carrying a knife like this, which, you know, this size and weight range is very, very common, you're not going to have a problem with this knife. There's nothing in excess here in terms of carry profile or anything like that. So let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy here. So we're looking at peel ply textured G10 that has some kind of angular chamfering lines here, but you know, it does look nice. The handle, the angular chamfering lines do kind of go along with some of the angular lines on the blade. This is more of a, well, it is a tanto, but it's also kind of a harpoon tanto. And I think the lines on the blade, you know, complement the lines on the handle really, really nicely. The biggest thing though, you know, however the handle looks is one thing, but whether or not it's comfortable is another thing, and this is very comfortable. There's really only one hot spot, and it's this, the pocket clip sticks up a little bit. It's not a major hot spot. I can definitely feel it. I wouldn't call it uncomfortable, but as far as the rest of the knife goes, no. Everything has been really, really well knocked down. You know, even these edges like right here that look like they might be sharp, no, they're kind of like double chamfered, so they really don't cause any issue in hand. Also, this area up here, while it's not a full choil, I can lock in almost to the second knuckle. About right here, that's perfectly comfortable without being too risky in terms of running my finger up on the blade. And it's complemented by this area back here, this sort of harpoon notch, and it really allows me to kind of choke up and feel good. But if you don't want to choke up, you know, you do have a full forefinger position or a full forefinger grip back here. It's really easy to lock into the knife and it feels really good. In fact, the overall ergonomic experience of this knife is really, really good. I'm really happy with it. I'm also happy that the jimping is not hyper aggressive, that none of these lines up here, I mean, all these little areas have been knocked down. There's been, you know, extra chamfering and extra attention to make sure that these lines have all been knocked down. Everything really, you know, all the little corners have been paid attention to, and I appreciate that. It's something that I always comment on, you know, satin finished blades, especially on budget blades. You know, I find that some corners tend to be a little bit angular. Obviously, they want to keep the processes down so they can keep the costs down. So when I see little things like this, you know, things that are normally indicative of a higher price point, it really makes me happy. And this is absolutely the case here. This knife, I actually was a little bit nervous about because I got it out and I was like, boy, this is nice. It's D2 and G10, right? This I didn't mention that yet. The blade steel's D2. It's D2 and G10. It has a lot of features that are, you know, nice and indicative of a higher price tier, I guess. And so I was a little nervous to look the price up. I was like, oh, I really don't want this to be. And I was very pleasantly surprised with the price. So all of these little things are nice. They are very welcome. I love the little fuller in here. The blade would still look okay without the fuller, but I think the fuller really adds character. Call it whatever you want. the little area right here, this little notch or groove or whatever. Some people are probably wondering, can you access it and do the reverse flick? Kind of. It's pretty uncomfortable. This is, in my opinion, it's mostly just a show thing. But you can technically engage it. It is a million times easier to just use the flipper tab. In fact, the flipper tab, truthfully, is just perfectly shaped. Kind of like that there's a little hole in there. Again, chamfering lines, keeping those edges nicely knocked down. It's really comfortable. This thing is fun to flip over and over and over again. We have a flat on this Tanto that carries out about 80% the length of the blade, and it definitely carries meaningful thickness out to the tip. This is a robust blade shape. Tantos are known to be very, very durable. It comes down to not what I would call a thin edge. I wouldn't call it an excessively thick edge, but it's definitely not a thin edge. Will it cut? Will it slice? Certainly. This is a knife that I would not hesitate to use outside, right? That geometry is going to be, it's going to be beneficial in terms of durability for heavier cutting. It's not going to slice as efficiently as an open L, but, it depends on what it is that you're going to do with a knife. In terms of regular EDC tasks, what most of us use our knives for, this knife is going to be just fine. It's going to be, a little bit better at some of your puncture tasks. And some people like the fact that Tantos have two completely separate edges. So you can use one to get into packages or scrape or whatever, and then you can use one as a slicer, right? The other nice thing that I appreciate is that this has belly. It's not a straight Tanto. So that is going to help a little bit when you're doing some slicing tasks. So overall, I really like the blade shape. That fuller doesn't really get, it's not something that's going to hang up while you're cutting if you're going to press this blade into material, heavy, thick cardboard or really thin material, whatever. The fuller itself has been nicely knocked down, so it's not like there's like a sharp corner here or anything like that. I just really like the blade. I also like that there's nothing on the front and it just says D2 on the other side. That's nice. I hate it when we've got a big crazy brand logo and then on the other side we got this paragraph and it says, serial number 0242JB for potato. I don't need all that, right? I definitely don't need to see China on the blade. I know this knife is made in China, which, by the way, if you didn't know, this knife is made in China. Kubey manufactures, I believe, most of their knives out of China. I have not heard otherwise. I could be wrong, but I believe most Kubey knives are made in China. But yeah, the blade is wonderful. It looks nice. Another thing that looks nice that I really, really appreciate is the fact that they've put their logo on the pivot. I've always said that that's something that I appreciate. Putting your logo on the blade, most of the time I'm kind of indifferent about it as long as it's not this big, like Microtech puts their stuff around the middle of the blade. I don't really like that. I love it when they just use some other part of the knife that's a little more unassuming, right? So it's there, just, so they can have their logo on it, but it's not taking away from the main part. Like, I like looking at the blade and appreciating the blade. That's the part that that draws me to the knife, the blade. So I don't want a bunch of stuff all over it, and I think Kubey does a good job of making sure that's not the case. The pivot also looks really nice. It's perfectly fitted. It's just wonderful. Another thing we didn't talk about, because this is peel-ply texture, it's not aggressive peel-ply texturing. Not only do the ergonomic lines lock you in, but there is enough texturing right there where you get some grip, so I appreciate that. Access to the lock bar is fantastic. There's a nice large cutout here, and then they've sort of softened it up on the other side by knocking it out a little bit right here. It's very easy to engage and disengage. I just don't have a problem with that. The hardware looks nice. Again, down here, that one screw, really, really nice that there's just one, and there's a standoff. The funny thing is, in terms of structural integrity, you really don't need more. Like looking at the Ontario Rat, look at this. Not even counting the stop pin, which is technically another standoff. 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to count the stop pin, it's got 5 standoffs. We don't need that many standoffs. We got a stop pin, and we got another standoff down here. I don't feel like I can squish this thing or it's flexing or anything like that. It's solid. So that's nice. It's nice to know that if I want to take this thing down, I'm not going to have a million parts running everywhere, and I appreciate that. Pocket clip is really close to excellent. Now, it'd be nice if there was a spot on the other side, but this is actually set into the G10, which means if they were going to put it on the other side, there would be another spot milled out here. Some people really don't like that. They consider it an aesthetic flaw or just an eyesore. I don't really care. It would have been nice to have a lefty position, even if it is just it's a right-handed liner lock. But I'm okay with it. I'm right-handed. Sorry, 10% of our population is left-handed, so that's unfortunate for left-handed people. Sorry about that. But I do like that they laid it into the G10. Wish that screw was recessed, but truthfully, in and out of the pocket, I don't have much of a problem with it. I think that style of screw catches your pants a little bit less, it's really just fine. And it absolutely is a deep carry clip, and I like the design. I don't like the bill very much. I've talked about that. We see a lot of knives with bills. I really like pocket clip designs that are more like this, that have more of a swoop, so it definitely gets over the pant material, but it's not like this thing that's kind of sticking up, right? And that's not just, you know, the fact that it might be more likely to catch on something. It's a little more of something that would hook or grab something and then bend out. But also it would, in my opinion, it probably would make for a little bit better ergonomic experience. I can feel the clip. The only thing that I can feel is the clip, and perhaps that's emphasized because all of the other lines on the knife are really, really good. It's not that big of a deal though. It's a minor hotspot. If you're really gonna go out and use this knife hard, you should be wearing gloves, in which case you're not gonna feel the clip. You're only gonna feel that clip if you're gonna take this knife and you're gonna cut continuously with it, you know, without gloves. If you're just gonna get this knife out periodically throughout the day to make a quick cut, open a box or something like that, then yeah, you're not gonna notice the clip at all. The other side of the pivot is the adjustment side, and it looks nice. The knife locks up at, it's like 40%, and the blade is, it might be ever so slightly off, but I have been flipping this quite a bit. I'm not gonna count it off too much. I mean, even in this price range, I do like to see absolute perfection. I suppose we can give it a little bit of a turn here with my tools, just in case, you know, perhaps I loosened it up from flipping it, because this thing is very fun to flip, and because of that, I've been flipping it a lot. I gave it a little bit of a turn here, and it's still kind of just, you can see right there, it's just a little teeny tiny bit off-centered. Not that big of a deal. It's not rubbing. Even still, it's nice to make sure that everything, you know, it's nice when I receive a knife in any price range that is perfectly centered. I don't consider it that big of a deal. But the lockup is absolutely solid. There is no movement up, down, left, or right. Even when I was really curious, I was like, I bet I can wrench on it, really force some. No, I pushed pretty hard. I'm not feeling a lot. In fact, I'm not feeling anything, so I'm really, really happy about that. So again, little things that I can nitpick. A couple of the screws are T6. That's not really that big of a deal. It's a little bit thick behind the edge. Not crazy. It's not going to really stop anybody from doing regular knife tasks. The pocket clip is a little teeny tiny bit of a hotspot. It's got a little bit of a bill, and it's a little teeny tiny bit off-center. These are pretty minor things. The centering thing might have just been mine. I have another Kubey knife just off to my right, and the one that I previously, well, actually reviewed a long time ago on the channel, both of those are perfectly centered. So that may not be something that's completely normal. It's not absolutely outside of the realm of normal for this price range, but it's still something I like to see, you know, perfected, you know, with any knife that I'm going to spend any amount of money on here in 2020. Kind of really want it to be centered. So all of these things considered, let me think about this. Did we go over every last little aspect of this knife? And, you know, the normal, you know, for some people this is going to be a little bit heavy, a little bit big. It might even be a little bit too thick, and that's completely understandable. It's just not the case for me. This is the absolute, you know, size range, like right between 8 and 8 1/4 inches that I really, really prefer. And it's got that choil, it's got that that notch up there, right? D2, absolutely, totally acceptable in this price range. I like how the G10 looks. I like the ergonomic lines. There's a lot to like here. In fact, there's so much to like that I'm absolutely going to put it on my most recommended knives playlist and my cheap knives that I like playlist, because this thing comes in right at about 40 bucks. In some cases, actually a little bit less. I think I saw it for a couple bucks less here and there. I'm going to be providing links down in the description where you can get this version. You can get an all black version. I think they've got one with green G10 and a black blade. This is nice, and this is definitely, you know, a knife that you can really go out and use. It is on bearings. They might get caked up a little bit, but my experience with bearings is you can simply blow them out and just keep using it. This knife is, you know, made in a way that absolutely is competitive in terms of fit and finish with a lot of what Civivi's putting out there. This is really impressive. This is a nice knife, and it looks good too. This is a good looking knife. I really, especially the blade. Nice job on the blade. Man, that is really, really impressive. I don't think I properly emphasized that enough in the earlier parts of the review, but I really like this, and I can't argue with the price. It's solid, it's usable, it's ready to go. This is a great knife. It's not going to be perfect for everybody, but as far as my own personal standards, yeah, I can absolutely recommend this knife. This is really cool. Guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it for today's video. Like I said, check out the links in the description and check out the Kubey website if you want to get a little bit more information on the company, the other knives that they've got. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.